let's talk about organizational impediments. But first of all, there we go. Let me share my screen. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Andy. I'm a enterprise coach and trainer working at Leadership Tribe, and I'm joined here by my wonderful friend and colleague, Krishna. Krishna, do you want to just say what you are? in 2 minutes or less.
I work as a chief storyteller for Leadership Tribe. I'm a coach, trainer, and a mentor for various organizations. And I've been working as a change analyst, transformation consultant for the last 20 years and above. And I'm right now using all my knowledge and the skills what I've learned working with enterprises as well as with startups, bringing all that knowledge back to the participants in form of training. So that's a little bit about me. If you want to know more, I'll be more than happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. One of my colleagues is going to add LinkedIn addresses in the chat window, so feel free to connect with us. Andy?
Thank you for joining us, Krishna. So, just an introduction about what we do here at Leadership Tribe. We are here to support leaders in cultivating authentic relationship with teams, safe environments, empowering teams, helping teams excel at various competencies, working within teams and organizations to improve ways of working, designing and maintaining sustainable change, and building high performance, and also sharing the wisdom of our tribe with your tribes as well. That's a little bit about us. We'll talk a bit more later. And today, we'll be working together to make this webinar successful. So we'd like to encourage you at various points to use the chat. We'd love to hear back from you so that we can interact with you. At the end of the session, there will be some Q&A, which we would love to hear your questions. And let's have fun. So, first of all, what are organizational impediments? According to you, what's your definition of organizational impediments? Type it in the chat window. Systemic issues, yes. Too much work to do. Too busy all the time. Building a system causing waste. Yes, yes. Things beyond the team to fix. Too much work in progress. These are all great examples of organizational impediments. Let me share some that we found, some examples of some categories of organizational impediments that we have found here. So when we talk about strategic impediments, these are impediments with the strategy. So I'd like to ask a question again. Type in yes or no. How many of you are aware that your project is mapped to your organization's strategy? Yes or no? Yes, yes. We've got some great participants here, Krishna, who are very aligned with their organization. It's been my experience as a change consultant that a lot of the time at the low level, the team level, sorry, I shouldn't say low level, at the team level, the mapping of what we're doing does not map onto what the organization is planning to do. And this is an example of a strategic impediment where we're talking about, like, what am I doing? Where is my place in this organization? How are we working here? So this is one example. We have structural impediments. So these are examples where, like, we ask the question, who's doing what here? What does success mean? And what's getting in our way? So think about this as a literal, like, impediment to the structure of making a building. So we have poorly defined roles and responsibilities, where we have people that don't know what they're meant to be doing, or people that are doing the wrong thing. What does success mean? Well, we have bad performance metrics and bad rewards and reviews as well. So understanding what it is that we're trying to achieve, and understanding what it means to succeed, and things that are getting in our way. And these could be like financial controls or compliance controls. These could be things embedded in the organization that are impeding our route to change. Cultural impediments as well, where we're asking the questions, how do we work together? So understanding leadership values and principles, how do we all come together as an organization with our different cultures? And we've got some of these examples. Have any of you heard of these before? The "you're good but I'm better," or "my idea is better." Having competition over collaboration, and having teams that aren't aligned to individuals. So having individuals that are working maybe against the team because of cultural issues. Krishna, any thoughts on cultural? How do we create a culture of growth?
When we're talking about culture, and they are various ways of looking at it. One of them is understanding what is it for our employees, the teams that would make them successful. So a simple example, during COVID, most of us are working from home. How many of you work from home? Type yes or no in the chat window. All right, there are a few yeses. There are a few yeses that some of us are working from home during the COVID times. When we were working, there were teams in US, Europe, India, China, and there were some in Vietnam. The simple things like how can we arrange a meeting in such a way that we can make people more inclusive. Some teams what I found was that some teams in one region, they try to set up ridiculous meeting times where it's ungodly hours on the other part of the world. As we are working in a global space, how can we be more inclusive, even with the time zones? So how do we make this better? So that's a simple example of what I found working with cross-cultural teams in different geolocations. So, yes, culture plays a very important role. And there was a famous saying, culture eats what for breakfast, ladies and gentlemen? If you know the answer, type it in the chat window, please. Thank you, you know.
Yes.
It does eat strategy for breakfast. So, being cognizant about it. And what is the right kind of a culture we want to build in to reduce some of the impediments or stop them completely? Andy?
Thank you, Krishna. Yeah, I completely agree. When we say things like we're daily stand-ups at 9 o'clock in the morning, that works great if your 9 o'clock is the same as my 9 o'clock, right? This is an example of a cultural impediment. And the next category is educational impediments. This is where we're asking questions of like, what am I doing here? How do I do this? Who's in charge? So this is making sure that the people that are working understand what their roles are and that they have training. A lack of training is a massive educational impediment, not being trained to do the job that you want to do. And especially at an organizational level, not having a team that's trained on what they're going to do, and understanding who's in charge and what, and who is the leader. These are all educational impediments as well. So let me ask you another question. Why do we care? Why do we care about organizational impediments? Let me hear your thoughts. Type it in the chat window. Why do you care about organizational impediments?
There are some interesting answers here, Andy, because
Wow. Yeah.
she's talking, Isabella is talking about, I think hierarchy can be impediment to collaboration smoothly. Some people have hierarchy in mind. Remote work is not that an impediment. I can't agree more. Navneet talks about work satisfaction and
Feel value, feeling valued.
feeling valued.
Yeah.
Nitin talks about productivity decrease in lead time. Oh, there's some really interesting points about cycle times, lead times. It creates a barrier to communication and delivering value too. Isabella, we want to have fun and feel more satisfied. I respect Isabella. I don't know where you're coming from,
Yes.
but I love that. Demotivates. Now need feel valued. Preeti talks about improving the flow and the outcomes. Mahesh, to bring change that is real and sensed by. And there are some smiley faces after that.
Fantastic. Oh, fantastic answers. Thank you so much. So this is me as a change agent. This is why I care about organizational impediments, because organizational impediments are icebergs. So this is an example. This is a systems thinking tool called the iceberg model. So when we look at the top level of the iceberg, what we can see above the water, we're looking at the events that happened. But when we look deeper, we start to look at patterns and trends within the organization that are making these events happen maybe more frequently. And there might be structures that are underlying beneath that, again, even deeper below the water, where we're looking at these kind of structures that are causing issues and events to happen. And right at the bottom, there may be mental models that are happening that are causing these events to continue to happen. So my interpretation of this is the organizational impediments create everyday impediments, everyday events and issues and problems that we have to deal with. And they stem sometimes from the system itself, deep within the system or deep within the organization. And Scrum facilitators serve the organization too. So I like to think of this as as having been a Scrum Master, an Enterprise Coach, and working at different levels of organizations that I've worked with, even at the team level, where we're working with maybe Scrum Masters or facilitators, Kanban facilitators, different types of people working at team levels have a duty to the organization. And this is for those of you who are familiar, this is a quote out of the Scrum Guide talking about how the Scrum Master serves the organization. But the one at the bottom that hits me is removing barriers between the stakeholders and Scrum teams. So why do we care? We don't just care about impediments within our team, we care about impediments between our teams and impediments between the teams and the stakeholders. All of these different aspects affect our teams. So as change agents, as people that want change for the better, we care about this at an organizational level. So let's talk about working with organizational impediments. What can we do? The first thing, when I've been looking into this, one of the first things that struck me about various different agile models or different frameworks, whether it's agile or waterfall or PMP, Prince2, all of these kind of frameworks that we use all talk about making the invisible visible. They all refer to transparency, visualization, all looking at making these things, making invisible things, like when we talk about the iceberg model, raising those items up to make them visible. In order to, using my Scrum hat, by making things transparent, we enable inspection. And by enabling inspection, we enable adaptation or change. And if you're really good, by adapting, you can make more things transparent, and you can accelerate this loop of enabling transparency, inspection, and adaptation. And that's what we all want as agilicists, to move fast and to adapt to change quickly. So identify and visualize. So I've got some examples here. You can visualize these organizational impediments in a Kanban board. You can create a RAID log, if anyone's familiar with that. A RAID stands for risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. And this is a very simple example of a RAID log. Or you can graffiti it on a wall in your office. If you identify these organizational impediments, as change agents, we need to make them visible. We need to raise them up to the surface so that they're not underwater, so that they can be seen. Once we see them, then we can look at how can we work with them. Also, seek help. So as change agents, we may not be necessarily the person that has the subject matter expert. We might not understand the entire organization. No one's expected to understand. If you're working with an organization that's 60,000, 600,000 people, you're not expected to understand every single part of it. So who can help? Who can help us visualize these impediments? Who can advise on this impediment? Who's the expert? Who knows most about this impediment? And who can help us solve it? Whether that's a person or a team or a leader or a part of the organization. And who will be your champions in raising attention, raising awareness of this impediment so that we can see it and move and work with it and work around it or work with it or resolve it. And my key advice, if you don't take anything else away from this webinar, my advice would be you can't fix everything by yourself. Any thoughts, Krishna, so far?
Andy, one thing I did love about it in your presentation when you shared is about creating transparency. When you have this organization impediment, sometimes they wind you up, annoy you, because as a passionate change agent, if you are in this webinar on a Friday evening, wherever you're dining from, you give a shit. Sorry, you really care about whatever you're doing in your way of working. So when you care, you are passionate about it. We get that. Creating transparency plays a very important role. How? When you have a dependency or an issue or a blocker which is stopping you from achieving it, put a dollar value, ladies and gentlemen. What is the cost of delay? And make it visible to your senior stakeholders. If you put a dollar value, what would happen in a steering committee board meeting? How will the conversations be with your leaders? This blocker is costing us £1,000 every single day. What would the conversation be? Type it in the chat window. Let's see what would your conversation will look like. Creating transparency, just a simple thing, putting a dollar value next to it. How would the conversations be? Will it be great? Will it be meh? How can we do this cheaper and better? If somebody's always looking at solving it. By just looking at the data, people will start asking questions. I still remember during COVID times, I was a little bit naughty and I was a little bit greedy, eating more stuff. The moment I went on a weighing machine, I had data, new insights. The data told me what to do, ladies and gentlemen. Even my trousers, I was not able to fit in. It was like tight fits. You're trying to squeeze in. It was a nightmare coming through. Coming through. That's my experience.
Uh,
The next thing, okay, you create this transparency. You bring people inclusive. As my colleague has said, don't do it alone. Bring more collaboration into the way you solve things and do iteratively and do some experiments, small experiments. That's the beauty of working in an agile environment, doing iteratively and learning from those experiments and adapting on top of those.
mm,
And one thing which I do love about it, in everything you do, it's all about the flow of value, ladies and gentlemen. In your team, at the development level, you're delivering from the moment you take a requirement in, you're delivering. There are there are some transactions you do, there are some handoffs you do, there will be some waiting times. If you're trying to understand what is my process and eliminating that waste, do you think that flow will get better? Will the flow get better, ladies and gentlemen, if you're removing waste from your process? Type yes or no. All right. So, as a change agent, I can't believe, Chandramoli, you stole my thunder by typing in value stream mapping. It works,
yes.
ladies and gentlemen. By bringing in a simple tool like value stream and understanding ways to eliminate the waste, we are improving the flow. Okay, if your teams, operational teams, are improving the flow and getting successful, what will happen at the business unit level? Will they be successful? The answer is yes, they will be successful. If the business units are successful, the departments who they are represent and working for, they will be, which in turn will make the organization successful. Flow matters. Look at the ways you can optimize the flow to improve the ways of working. And whenever you're making changes, make it an evolutionary change. I've seen some people who go into Scrum training or product owner training or even Agile certifications, whatever they do, they come back and they're so baptized and so motivated, excited, they want to apply the book. It doesn't work. All the frameworks, you can quote me, you can quote Krishna Choripelli saying that every framework is incomplete by design. It is incomplete by design. You name it, it's incomplete, according to me. The reasons, when you take a framework, you need to understand the domains you're working in, the culture, the people. You take it into consideration, you apply it, and you adapt it. You adapt it to the working needs, the environment of the organization. That's how you can bring change. So it has to be an evolutionary change and a change which is constantly improving and building on top of it. So in the name of Agile, you do for 2 days of Kumbaya and you go back, it's useless according to me. And for everything you do, there is one thing which says inspection and adaptation. You inspect, learn from it, and you adapt. You inspect, you learn from it, and adapt. And that's the beautiful thing about empiricism. It's about creating the transparency where you're able to inspect, learn from it, and you're adapting continuously. So, Andy, that's my 2 cents. I will also provide my summary in the chat window, my notes. These are some of the pointers. So, over to you, buddy.
Thank you, Krishna. So another tool, so we're talking about seeking help as well. Another tool I want to introduce you to, you may have heard of Liberating Structures. This is there are, I think, 34 different liberating structures that provide assistance in how we can work with different impediments, different ways of improving our work. And this one is called a 15% solution. And what this is talking about is the next step in working with organizational impediments is to take action. So a 15% solution is not talking about trying to solve the entire problem overnight. We're not trying to we're not going to identify an organizational impediment and fix it immediately right now. These organizational impediments are sometimes embedded really low down in the organization. So how could we solve 15% of that? So you could ask yourself these questions. What can I do right now? Immediately, once I identify an organizational impediment, what can I do about it immediately? What can I do without needing any approval? Without needing to ask my manager, without needing to ask my team lead? What can I do by myself? What can I do by the end of the day that might just move the needle on this impediment, that might start trying to solve it, resolve it, work with it, work around it? And my favorite one, what can I do without having to have a meeting about it? So I have a story when I worked with a gaming organization. We had a retrospective once, and our retrospectives were usually quite easy. Everyone was fairly happy. And they said, yeah, things are going well, nothing's going badly, all good. Until one day someone said, actually, I need to upgrade my computer because it takes quite long for me to compile the app. And I said, what are we talking about? How long? Because I'm a data nerd. I want to know the numbers. And they said about between like 2 to 4 hours. And I said, how many times are you compiling the app per week? They said, maybe 3 or 4 times. And I said, well, what are you doing while you're compiling the app? And they said, well, nothing. Because if I'm doing something while I'm compiling the app, then it slows it down and it takes longer to compile it. And I said, so you're telling me that you're spending about 10 hours per week doing nothing? And they said, pretty much, yeah. And I said to the rest of the team, is this true for all of you? And they said, yeah, some of us it's 5 hours doing nothing, some of us it's a bit more. And I said, wow. And after the retrospective, I marched into my managing director's office and I said, have you heard this? And I told him about this. And I didn't even need to put the numbers. I didn't even need to put the dollar value to it, as Krishna was saying. I didn't even need to calculate that dollar value. I saw him calculating that dollar value in his head. And he said, wow. The next week, the entire development team, 60 developers, we ordered them all brand new MacBook Pros so that we could improve this process. So the 15% solution that all I did was raised awareness of it. I took an action. I went and spoke to my MD. I identified and I raised it. I didn't solve that. I didn't buy the MacBooks. I didn't do any of the technical development or any of the information. The 15% that I did was just by, what can I do? I can talk to someone. I can raise this awareness. So there's an example for you. So to summarize, all together now, how do we work with organizational impediments? First of all, identify what they are. Use your powerful questions, use these different tools to look and drill down the systems thinking tools like the iceberg. Use root cause analyses to drill down into what is causing repeated issues to happen. What are these issues? Then visualize them, make them visual, make other people see them. Graffiti them on your office wall if you need to. Make them big and seen, because once we see them, we can then take action and seek help. Find out who can help you with this. Who is the expert? Who's the subject matter expert? Who's the technical expert? Who has the domain knowledge that could assist you in making and working with this impediment? And then take an action. We can't solve all impediments. A lot of the time, we might be working in finance, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, gambling, these kind of highly regulated organizations that have impediments built into them, impediments to change that are designed into the system. And this is fine. So we don't necessarily want to solve those impediments, but we want to work out how we can work with them. What can we do to engage with those impediments and understand them, so that as change agents and as people that want to improve our working, people that want to work at a high performing level, how do we work with those impediments if we cannot solve them? And also seek a mentor, get training, look for courses online that you can take. We take Leadership Tribe, teach a lot of these different courses that talk about working with organizational impediments. And we do a lot of work with talking about organizational structure, how organizational culture, and how you can be an effective change agent. I believe that brings us to my conclusion. This is my strategy for working with organizational impediments. Any thoughts on that, Krishna? Any even better ifs for me, Krishna?
So I would like to take this to our audience, the participants who've been in the webinar. What is that one takeaway you had by listening to our colleague, Andy Kimbry? What is that one takeaway from this webinar? Removing these organization impediments, or to work with them? Type it in the chat window, please. Visualize, Yuju Lin talks about visualize and different types of impediments. Navneet talks about take action without waiting for anyone else to initiate it. Yes. Get on it. I love it. Wow. Information is flooding. Let's look at some of them. Martin talks about show an impediment as a waste of money in numbers. It works, Martin. It works most of the times. Bharat talks about creating a dedicated impediment board or graffiti. Okay, graffiti on the office wall. I am not taking accountability of it. If you want to send it to Andy Kimbry. Be careful on how much graffiti you're going to do. But what I would recommend is it's called creating big visual charts. That would help, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Andy, you're a bad influence, dude. Graffiti! But talking about creating a dedicated impediment, we spoke about it. Don't be a superhero and try to fix everything yourself. Yes, be a human being. Thank you very much, Sarah. Tarang, inspect the root cause and seek help if needed. Isabella, visualize the impediment even if everyone is aware. Visualize in a single picture the waste. Make it happen. Hell yeah. Understand that we have an independent. Sorry, but I'm already practicing said. Oh, I love it, Chandramauli. Nandu, focus on getting it done, however, using collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great takeaways, amazing takeaways as we are going through. And within your organizations, there might be some experienced people who are there. Seek out, how did they, your leaders, so if they've been in the organization for a year, 2 years, how did they handle these impediments? Reach out to them. Find out if they can mentor you. So if you want to grow in your journey, get yourself trained or get yourself mentor. You will find them. Find out, because as a mentor, you are responsible for your growth. As a mentee, you are responsible for your growth. So be shameless, be hungry, and find the right person who can help you to achieve it. And by the way, if I'm talking about a great mentee, there's a dude called Andy Kimbry. He was bloody annoying. He takes the hell out from me for him to be successful. You need to have the curiosity of a child. Curiosity of a child, how? I still remember my niece who went through a why phase, so shameless and annoying. Uncle, you told me about this, but still why? I was like, what? I just explained to you. Get off my back. So shameless and annoying and amazing. And amazing. So that's something which I would recommend you to look into it. So we will, Andy, would it be okay if we can take 5 minutes for a quick questions Q&A and we can call it a day?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any questions or about anything that we've talked about today, let us know you can use the question and answer or type it in the chat window. Anything you want to know from me or my friend Krishna. Oh, I see one. Actually, I see already one here from Naveen. How do we address the issue when the organizational culture is very bureaucratic and red tape is causing business decisions, delays to demotivation and opportunity losses, but it has political benefits to certain groups who aim just at survival? Wow, that's I could.
Okay.
How long have you got, Naveen? How long do you have for the rest of the day for me to talk about this? I think my favorite answer to this is there's something called nudge theory that originated in psychology, where what we look at is it's a bit similar to the 15% solutions, where we're not trying to solve everything in a day, or we're not trying to like overcome an entire problem. We're not going to overhaul an entire organization in a day, a week, a month, maybe even 10 years. So what nudge theory says is, what small change could we make? What small, like, how can we move the needle a little bit? Just nudging those things. You're never going to eliminate red tape completely, in my experience. If anyone has eliminated red tape completely, please connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me how you did it. But there's always going to be some level of hierarchy, bureaucracy. These organizational impediments will always come up at some point. But by using nudge theory, just little changes, small things that we can do just to improve things, maybe improve them by 1%, 2%. Try and focus on those small aspects. And we use the phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you can make something 2% better, just 2% better for your team, how would that lift all other teams? If you could make things 2% easier for your leadership, how would that improve things for the rest of the leaders and all the other leaders? So I'd encourage you to look into nudge theory and try not to solve everything all at once. Try to just solve the small things. I think this Mother Teresa quote that said, you can do no great things, only small things with great amounts of love. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much. So, Mushabir Zaidi asked a question here, Andy. So, what kind of impact an agile coach is expected to make at an organization level? So, if you take the word agile and coach out, if you put a human being in, is it's not the roles and responsibilities of an agile coach. As an agile coach, I have a new hat called agile coach, so I need to do this. No, it what matters for that organization at that moment of time to help them achieve what they need to do. So at the team level, what is the intent of as a team coach? You're helping them to achieve their goal, the team goal. It can be a sprint goal or a project goal or a release goal. You do what it takes to help them. And if you apply the same principles as a parent in your home, if you're a parent or a family member or a sibling, what is, from your experience, what is that kind of a role a parent needs to play if you are in your family? You do what the hell it takes to help your family be better, secure, safe. You do what it takes. So I know it sounds like a diplomatic answer saying that. It comes back to the individual at that moment of time to see what matters for their organization or their team to help them to achieve it. And some people do ask me, Krishna, how do I know if I can be building a high performing organization or high performing team? What's the formula for it? If you're interested in the formula, there is one to build a high performing organization. Please write this down, ladies and gentlemen. High performance equals potential, the potential this team or the individual or the organization can have or they can do, minus the inhibitors, anything that slows them down or stops them from achieving that goal. Whatever your team is doing, if they do 2x, can you class them as high performing? Some teams do, because without applying the agile mindset, if you're just practicing those the agile rituals, whatever you're doing, stand up, sprint planning, retrospective, sprint reviews, you do all those things, I've seen teams improve by 20%. There is data, anecdotal data. But if you're bringing in the mindset, the teams are able to deliver whatever they can times 3. If you want to even more better, ladies and gentlemen, there are many ways you can unleash your teams to their full potential. That's what agile coaches exist, to unleash them to a potential they don't even know. I hope that answers. And there are many more I would love to share, but I would love to look at the second question. Andy, if that's okay, we can look at the second one.
Yes. Thank you, Krishna.
So there is one call. From your experience, is there an impediment type? If so, share some on behavior point of view.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. An impediment type. So, Sat, could you maybe rephrase the question? I'm not sure I fully understand the question itself.
If there is an impediment which is related to the behavior point of view, impediment which is causing bad behaviors in the organization.
Sorry. So behavioral impediment.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you look at, if we think about systems thinking, right? A system could be like a solar system or a family. And if you look at your family, can you think of any behavioral impediments within your family or your larger family? So yes, behavior can be an impediment. And when we look at the iceberg level, one of those levels in the iceberg model does talk about different behaviors that happen. And this is where the powerful coaches, enterprise coaches, agile coaches, this is where these people really thrive, in those kind of working with those behaviors, maybe working with dysfunctional personas. There's a great article one of my friends, Artie Bart, has written about working with conflict recently, and how us as agilicists can work with conflict, not trying to avoid it, but trying to work with it and trying to work alongside conflict as well. So I'd recommend looking up that article, which hopefully my colleague Axa can drop into the chat. But yes, I think behavioral point of view is we all have behaviors, right? We're all humans, and behind every human is a list of hopes and fears and desires and wants and things we're scared of. So we need to understand, when we're looking at behaviors, remember that behaviors are people aren't dysfunctional, behaviors are dysfunctional. So we need to look at the human aspect and understand the human behind the behavior when we're working in that context. Is that Krishna? I know you have a lot of experience with working with this at an organizational level.
Andy, what you recommended, I think that's a great start. And once people who have asked that question, once they practice it, if they want more information, we can provide more options or tools to help them to improve those behaviors. So I would listen to Andy and kick off from there. There's another interesting question I want to look into, Andy, which is from Chandramouli Joshi. Got a question on IC Agile programs. As a training provider, how how are we differentiating ICP, Agile Coaching, etc., from programming from ICF? They are completely different to start with, Chandramouli. ICF is International Coaching Federation. IC Agile is International Consortium of Professionals. They're completely different organizations.
It's an international consortium of agile professionals. Yes,
they're completely different. In ICF, it's around professional coaching. So for me to be an ACC, Associate Certified Coach, when I was going through my journey, I had to do 60 hours of learning, 10 hours of mentoring sessions, and 100 hours of coaching practice, which I need to show evidence, which I had to submit to ICF coaching, ICF. And for my BCC journey, on top of my ACC, I have to do one more hours of learning, 60 hours of learning, 10 hours of mentoring, and 500 hours of professional coaching. In IC Agile, as an Agile coach, there is an element of professional coaching which we will introduce. But on top of it, there is other elements which we'll also introduce, such as Agile coach as a mentor, Agile coach as a trainer, Agile coach as a facilitator, Agile coach as a change agent. So when you're bringing in all these tools and practices together for a given problem, how would you dance in that moment to solve it? You might be using professional coaching. You might be using mentoring. You might be using training. So that's the differentiation. Professional coaching is just professional coaching on its own. But when it comes to Agile coaching, it's called a stance. There are a set of skills, tools, which you need to be aware about it. And given a moment, depending on the situation, how would you wear each hat? I hope that answers your question, Chandramouli. And there is also a second part. Correct me if I'm wrong. When we're exclusively talking about coaching, I think ICF related. I agree with you about the coaching competencies. 80% of the coaching competencies have more than 80%, they've been nicked. There is also IAF, but there are various coaching, coactive coaching. So we look at in Agile coaching, there are different coaching techniques and tools. I am an NLP, neuro-linguistic programmer, and behavioral coaching therapist as well. So I use some of my coaching techniques from various tools, and we also train them in the Agile coaching. So it's not about, I'm a coach, I'm only be coaching. It's not about that. As a coach, using the different tools and techniques, how can we help people so that they can solve their own problems? Or maybe start as a coaching stance and maybe shift as a mentor. Start as a coaching stance, maybe shift as a trainer. This is what we teach you, how to dance, Chandramouli, at that moment. That's what we teach. So moving on. I didn't realize we are on top of the hour, Andy.
We are, yes. So I think we've answered all the questions.
Yes, we did.
Just to finally, I think Krishna has given us a very good information about IC Agile Coaching. We just to talk about us. We provide fully accredited coaching training services. We empower individuals, and we differentiate ourselves from others with client focus, empirical learning, flexibility, customized training, sheer professionalism, all of these great things. If you would like to know more information, please do get in touch with us. You can go to leadershiptribe.com. You can email hello@leadershiptribe. We would love to hear from you. And if you would love to hear from us more, you can connect to us on LinkedIn. You can search for myself or Krishna on LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And we would love to hear from you, and we would love to spend time with you again. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your questions, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you, Andy. And ladies and gentlemen, have a kick-ass weekend. Have a lovely time. On that note, longest way up, shortest way down. Have a great weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Aksa. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
thank
Thanks.
you, Akim. Thank you,
Have
Chandramohan.
a
Thank
great
you,
weekend.
Shara. Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.